Welcome to this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I feature Olympians, CEOs, disruptors, authors, professional athletes, and the best of the best, where they share their stories of resilience with my lens on leadership and culture. Let's get started. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I am so excited to bring our guest to you today, who is my friend, Andrew DeGood. He is a seasoned professional with over 20 years of experience in the finance and technology sectors. His career spans a diverse range of roles in operations, product development, client service management, and business development, culminating in the co-founding of Canopy Financial Technology Partners in 2020, which he successfully sold in 2022. Currently, Andrew is the co-founder and CEO of Ask Bob AI, a pioneering artificial intelligence startup that builds custom large language models for companies. With the slogan, "Where answers come faster than your morning coffee," Ask Bob AI primarily addresses the significant time and cost organizations spend on answering questions, offering solutions that emphasize speed and cost savings. In addition to his work in AI, Andrew is passionate about mental health in the workplace and is co-founder and CEO of Iron Tribe, a men's community dedicated to creating connections and inspiring growth among men. I had to shorten this so much. Welcome to the show, Andrew. We are going to get into it. This is going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited. Let's go.
Good. So how I start every show, it's the same. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Oh, my story in a little bit. So born and raised in Florida. We'll fast forward through the early days. I was a little bit of a troubled youth, if you will. Dropped out of college, and I spent about 10 years trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I was in high-end restaurants. I did car sales of all things, and a bunch of other things. And was fortunate enough in my late 20s to land into the finance world, which would eventually lead me into technology. All the things you mentioned, I think the one thing I would probably add is, for listeners, is I'm bipolar too. And one of my missions in life is to normalize the conversations around bipolar. And that is ultimately what actually led me towards men's mental health and founding Iron Tribe.
So let's start there, because how we met and our story, I don't think a lot of people know it, and I think it's pretty freaking cool. But you and I are both in the Outlier Project, and we had one of our traditional intro coffee chats, which was, I think, 30 minutes turned 2 hours. And it was one of these moments where you're like, I'm kind of between things. I sold my company. I'm figuring things out, but I really want to start this men's mental health community. And to which my answer was, you have to do this. And so I kind of got behind you and became kind of your nag in getting that off the ground. So let's start with Iron Tribe. Let's talk about like our journey, and then we can kind of take that through to how Ask Bob AI came about.
Yeah, it's funny. I can say I don't think Iron Tribe would have ever materialized if it wasn't for your nagging. There's so many things that we could talk about, but my imposter syndrome, like so many others, is runs rampant quite a bit for me. But what happened was, I was talking a lot and writing a lot about bipolar, and what was interesting is I kept having these men get shoved into my path, and they kept talking about the same things. I kept hearing, I'm alone. I don't really know how to connect with other guys. And then even from like younger guys who said they had a friend group, they said that I don't know how to talk to them about the important stuff.
Yeah.
And my wife and I were driving to Cincinnati for an event. And I turned to her in the car. And I guess, sorry for listeners, my wife is a psychologist. And I said to her, I said, what we've been doing just isn't working. And I meant men and men's mental health in that statement, not us. But it really made me take pause and go, okay, what can we do? And I don't know. I'm not a licensed mental health, practitioner, and don't pretend to be, but I really wanted to get curious about, what can we do? And after several months of so many conversations with so many different people, we really landed on Iron Tribe and this idea of creating online connections that move to offline experiences.
Mm. What I remember us initially talking about, and I of course knew about your bipolar experience, and I certainly knew about Salome, your wife's experience, and I felt there was nobody better qualified to lead this group of men. And this was not going to be something that could be woman-splained. It had to come from men. You had to be able to use language you could all relate to. And I love that you've created this opportunity for men to connect about all the things that men don't find easy to talk about. So mental health, obviously, but financial health, and how to talk about insecurity and relationships and loss and rage. And these are all topics that I think the whole world wants to talk about, but men specifically. You gave me a whole bunch of statistics when we first started talking about suicide rates and mass killings and all of these things. And your statement to me was, we're doing it wrong. We need to think differently. And that's what I loved that prompted this. And so I got so behind it and really behind you. And we were talking almost daily about, what this needed to be, how it needed to look, how it needed to feel. And I'm so happy that it's a functioning community now. It's just I'm so proud of you for what you built.
I am as well. I woke up this morning, we had 3 new members sign up last night, which is huge because, again, we're still early stages. Iron Tribe's only been around for a couple of months. And one of the things that was interesting when I was having these conversations, that I had some guys who were like, oh, well, there's men's groups. And I started looking around at them, and I won't name them, but they were really, really expensive. Yeah. And which there's nothing wrong with, right? I mean, Outlier Project is expensive. Yeah. I mean, there are certain communities where that makes sense, but they were bringing in speakers. And again, communities who do that, it's great. It serves a certain purpose. Sure. But I didn't feel like any of those groups allowed for like actual connection on a weekly basis. And for your listeners, the way we run our core main weekly online meetup is it's based in breakout rooms. So there are no speakers. We come into it, we talk about a topic, or sometimes we'll just leave it open to the group of like, hey, what are you navigating right now, right, throughout your life? Which, if Tony Neves listens to this, I did steal that idea from him. And we've seen some really amazing things. And one of the biggest things that I've learned for myself, and I think a lot of the guys in the group have learned, is that a lot of times guys just need another guy to say, me too.
Yep.
And that's it. Like, yep. I had this like crippling like shame and fear around my kids' college funds. Now, don't get me wrong, my kids have a college fund, but I had created this absurd idea in my head that they should be able to go to anywhere, anywhere, MIT, Princeton, whatever, for free, full ride, not have to worry about it, single cent, right? That's like $1 million in a college fund, right? Which is crazy. And I started telling other guys this story. I didn't need anybody's shoulder to cry on. I didn't need a therapist. I just literally had to say, and I had a bunch of guys, similar situations to me, and they all went, yeah, man, I feel the same way.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it was like, oh, well, okay. This is, that was all I really needed.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen in the breakout rooms is, these like really big aha moments. And I think like I can say without a shadow of a doubt, like it's changed my life, if nothing else. And I know that it's changed other guys' lives that are in the rooms.
Well, I think you hit on something that is so important to acknowledge, that all communities are different. And, I have great love, and I know you do too, for Outlier. And we do have a lot of speakers. We have over 200 events a year in Outlier. We also have opportunities for connection. And those every Wednesday calls, just like your Wednesday calls, are so important for the health of the community to stay connected. And I'm so grateful to Outlier because it gave me you and so many of our other dearest friends. But that connection cannot be minimized. It's so important. And I think for anyone
100%.
building a business or feeling lonely or needing some support, being part of a community is everything. It is so important to your mental health, to your joy factor, to just so much of the health and growth of your career. And that's been hugely important to me. And you've now got two. I've got more than two too. But regardless. Okay, so through the story, so we're pushing on Iron
Well, I
Tribe.
have three.
Well, yes, okay. So yes, three. So through our story, I'm bugging you on Iron Tribe. And at one point I say to you, okay, so I need some help. And you said, sure, what do you need? And my response was, I need to talk to some CEOs. Do you know anybody that could, spend some time with me? And you're like, yeah, absolutely. And you turn around 8 like this. And 7 of them got on Zoom with me right away, which was the coolest thing. So it was all for market research. They were so kind and so generous with their time. And one of them reached back out to you and said, Andrew, I'm so glad you connected me with Lyndsay. That was a great conversation, but I need to talk to you. I need a CEO for one of my companies, and I want it to be you. So this is what became of Ask Bob AI. So talk a little bit about how that happened and ultimately what Ask Bob AI is.
Yeah. So I met Tim Nguyen, who is my co-founder, about a year ago, maybe. And we were talking about some things. And actually the way we got introduced was my old co-founder, Tim, was looking for someone who could help him to better understand what was going on in the AI landscape. And my old co-founder recommended me to him because the two of them knew each other, but Tim and I didn't know each other. And so Tim and I got on several phone calls, kind of talked through some stuff. At the time, we thought we might do something together, the startup that I was with at that point in time and his company. And that just ended up not, materializing. And Tim and I kind of went our several ways. And Tim and I don't think we had talked in like 6 months or something. And all of a sudden, you connect, or I connect you with him, and he and I jump in a call, and he goes, I want to co-found this company, or I want to found a new company. I need a co-founder and a CEO. Do you want to do it? And my initial response, of course, was maybe. And the next week I got on a plane. I flew out to Orange County, California, and went to Tim's house, met his wife. We all went out to lunch. His wife is co-founder in his other technology company. And then we did like a 6-hour strategy meeting. And at the end of the day, we went, yeah, we can work together. Like, let's do this. And that was sort of the beginning of, what is now Ask Bob AI. I have to interject on the name of the company, though, or tell the story behind the name of the company, because everybody is always like, Ask Bob, like, where did that come from? We had come up with so many names, and for those founders out there know, like, oftentimes one of the most difficult things is naming your company.
Yes.
And every name we would come up with, the lawyer would be like, nope, trademark exists, or nope, the Delaware C Corp already exists, or Tim and I couldn't find a URL that would like make sense. And so he texts me late on a Friday night. I think we were like 2 weeks into this process. And he goes, what about Bob? And I was like, Bob? I'm like, that is absurd. I was like, no way. And so I slept on it. And the next morning I was like, maybe we could do something here. And so we landed on Ask Bob AI. My only demand, though, was we needed a Simpsons-esque character to play Bob. And so that's what then began, like, honestly, about a month and a half long journey of creating Bob.
Oh, I know. I got to weigh in on all my favorite designs. I appreciate it. And I love that he has a little ink, and I love that he's like an approachable yet cool dude. Yeah, it was really cool watching that all transpire.
Yeah. So to your other question, like what exactly is Ask Bob? One of the biggest wastes of time and cost within any organization is knowledge transfer. You can look at that as just your existing employees who are always having to ask questions,
Yeah.
whether it's of HR, operations, help desk. And a lot of those questions are the same thing over again. And all the documentation already exists within the organization, right? Now, think about new hires. I mean, with Canopy, my first company, we brought on 117 people in 5 months' time. The drag, what I messed up, one of the things that I learned through that experience was you obviously already calculate for productivity of the new hire, right? You're like, okay, week one, they're worth nothing. Week two, 25%, maybe depending on your business, 6 to 8 week,
Yeah, ramp up.
span
Mhm.
until they get to 100%. What I didn't calculate for was the amount of drag they would have on the rest of my productive employees.
Right.
So that's another place where we just see, knowledge transfer really sucking down. So when we looked out into the market, everybody had these, help desk softwares, whether it's Help Scout, Zendesk,
Mhm.
Jira, and these people are taking inbound questions, having to go through documentation, figure out the answer, and respond back. So what Bob does is we actually take all of the information that company has. That could be external information. So that could be things like all the tax code from the IRS or all of the underwriting guidelines from Fannie Mae. And then we take all of their internal, more private documentation as well. And
Mhm.
all of that is bundled together to then create effectively a private large language model that they can then ping with natural language questions. So if someone needs to know how to do a thing, they can just ask it in their normal language. And it can either be set up as a chat bot where it gives immediate feedback, or we can route it through your help desk system where you can have a human in the loop who's looking at the question and going, yeah, that's right, and release
Mhm.
it. Even in the betas of doing it in the fashion through the help desk, we've seen a labor reduction in about 40 to 60% and a
Mm.
50% rate of speeding up answering questions.
I love it. And I love that it's taking off. And I love that you had a really splashy start to Ask Bob AI. Again, all of this is like a great source of pride to see you just soaring because when we started, you were like, between things, I don't really know what I want to do. And now you're like so tethered to two really amazing causes. Not that Ask Bob AI is a cause, but a company. Okay, so I want to pivot a little bit because you were an exceptional leader at Canopy, and your style of leadership is one that I admire so much. And I really want to dig in on that because you know where we are. This is the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. We talk a
Yeah.
lot about leadership, and you and I have talked about this many times. So I want to talk a little bit about your philosophy as a leader, a people leader, and what was important to you and why that leadership style worked so well.
Yeah, so Canopy is my proudest thing,
Yeah.
like to date. There's no question about it. Selling Canopy was hard, was actually hard for me.
Yeah, I read
I'm gonna try not to cry, but it may. Um, when we started Canopy, I knew I wanted the culture to be completely different. I had come from a lot of toxic cultures. I'm very open about the fact that I was, the toxic monster in most of the organizations because I had been brought up and taught to manage through fear.
right.
Yelling at people, degrading people, that was acceptable, 100%.
The only
And
thing you probably ever saw.
yeah, 100% from my dad to, all of my early bosses and
Mhm.
things of that nature. So the first thing we did when we started Canopy was we really sat down and we said, what does this look like? What does the environment look like? And then the second thing we did was we came up with our list of 10 core values. And we had done nothing else. And here's why, and it's one of the biggest things that I say to people is You have three different situations with core values. And I'll talk about the two most common to begin with. Number one is you've got core values that somebody wrote on a list because they thought they were supposed to have a core value list, and they shoved it somewhere in their employee handbook, and they never talk about it, and they don't actually care about it. Mm-hmm. Right? Sadly, I would say that's probably the most common. Then number two, you have CEOs or executive teams who really want a good culture, and they create this fantastic list of core values, and they talk about their core values. But what they don't realize is that their operational infrastructure does not actually match their core values. So I'll give you an example of that. Is let's say that one of your core values, or ideas behind your core values, is supporting one another. That it's always, hey, always help, your desk mate or whatever that may look like, right? But then you have an operational infrastructure component of production bonuses. So my core values are telling Susie to help Jimmy, but my operational infrastructure is telling Susie, screw Jimmy, like go for yours, girl, right? Sort of situation. So that was a big thing for us, was we had to look at, like, how do we do that? So one of the things we did was we got rid of production bonuses. We were the only company in our space that did not do any form of production bonuses. Instead, what we did was we set up an employee pool to, at the end of the year, whatever was in that employee pool would go back to the employees. So the employees were getting basically a cut of the profits coming out of the organization. So the first two core values that were on our list were transparency and vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And those were by far the two things that were the most important to me. And I actually interviewed about 90% of all the people we hired. My co-founder thought I was a psychopath for doing it. And I spent a half an hour with every person just talking about our culture. Yeah. And just saying, I didn't even talk to them about hard skills. I didn't really care. I had somebody else interview them and, ensure they had the skills. But I wanted them to understand the culture. And I wanted them to understand not everybody's going to like this culture. Mm-mm. And if you don't like the idea of what I'm explaining to you, like, don't join, because you just won't make it. And I would tell everybody, I require everybody to be 100% transparent with everyone in the organization. And I want everybody to be vulnerable with at least a portion of people in the organization. What happened after that, I don't know that I anticipated. So about 6 months into the company, we had a situation that made it apparent to me that I needed to come out of the closet about being bipolar. So one thing for folks to know, it's estimated that about 70% of folks with bipolar actually live in the closet. As to say, they do not talk about it openly with anyone, outside of, maybe a partner, right? Yeah. Even my children didn't know that I was, bipolar. It was a very, very small group of individuals. And actually, as a matter of fact, I'm a member of another community, that third one I was mentioning, which is called the Bipolar Social Club, that was started by Paul English, the founder of kayak.com. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, the majority of the people in that organization are in the closet. So anyways, I decided, okay, I need to out myself, which became this sort of semi-viral post that I put out on LinkedIn a few years back, that I didn't expect to be viral. And that was probably pretty dumb on my part, given what I was exposing, right? So that really transformed into me having a lot of conversations with the employees in the organization about my own mental health and the importance. And what happened as a result was all these people started approaching me or other people in the company and saying, hey, you know what? I have Asperger's and I've never told anybody that. Or, hey, you know what? I have major depression disorder and I've never told anybody about that. And we all of a sudden had this like super tight knit community.
Mhm.
And my proudest statement is that in 2021, we had 130 employees. It was one of the most difficult labor markets for employers. And I had one resignation.
Mm.
And I know I had employees getting offers for more money to go
Right.
to other places. And they just didn't because of the connection.
I
And it
mean,
was like,
Andrew, I love so much about all of what you just said, but I really just want to hit on the vulnerability piece for the leaders that are listening that have not gone down a vulnerability path with their teams because you feel like if I share something, they're going to think less of me. I want to share that vulnerability is a spectrum. You do not have to do what Andrew did to be a vulnerable leader. You can say something small like, I burnt my arm on the pizza oven last night. And, has anybody else had a cooking disaster? Or I had an epic fail with my teenager. Like, all this is doing is giving people an opportunity to relate to you. And when you start to feel the response to that, you will be more inclined to share more. And all everybody wants from their leader is to be seen, to be understood, to be valued. And when you can make yourself relatable, that is a really big step to building trust. And all of the rest comes once you have that trust. So what you did was exceptional leadership. And you really set the tone and the example that this is a safe space to talk about hard things. And we're here to support each other. And that's why nobody left your company except that one person.
yeah, yeah. And the funny thing is we celebrated her, by the way. So she
Yeah.
got an opportunity at a competitor.
Yeah.
And I love this is another story I love. My knee-jerk reaction was fuck her. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that was my
Yeah. How dare
I
you?
because
Like,
that's I think
yeah,
that's just innately built into us,
it
right? But
hurts.
I took a moment and I went, wait a second. I can't give her the opportunity she's getting. And
Yeah.
she was going to a competitor. She was getting a senior vice president role. I didn't have anything in the organization to
Yep.
give her. And so in my industry, typically it'd been like you'd be thrown out the front door, you'd be,
Sure.
they'd throw some non-compete against you. And I called up John, my co-founder, and I said, you know what, let's do it different. Let's do the complete opposite.
Yep.
And so we did. And we celebrated her on our all employee meetings, and it felt so good. I
I
said, for
bet.
nothing else, like I felt good about it.
I bet.
Like,
I love that. And
and then there was no way that she could emotionally be okay with poaching any of our people or
no,
clients. That was the other thing, right?
that's so smart.
Had I been a jerk, she would have been like, oh, well, screw them. I'm
Oh my
taking
God,
their people.
that's so smart. And Andrew, whenever I had people on my teams that said, Lyndsay, I want to go talk to so and so about a new opportunity, their managers would come to me and be like, "You're gonna let her go?" And my response is, first of all, I want people that want to be here. So if somebody wants to go, I will support them. I will advocate for them. I'll recommend them. I'm happy to, hand them off to whoever. It was really important to me that everybody knew that if you were on my team, you wanted to be there. And so people saw people leaving there go, she's crazy. She's going to go over there. Doesn't she know how boring that's going to be? And I loved that my team understood that. So I love that you chose the opposite reaction because when people are hurt, hurt people. I think that's normal. I just think it's so much better when you can do what you did and thank her for what she did because she probably was a
Yeah.
valuable person on your team.
Yeah, we were a startup. She spent a significant amount of time. I want to real quick though go back to one thing that you were talking about with the leaders and that vulnerability of your life.
Yeah,
It's really important for anybody listening to this that your employees are looking for connection.
totally.
Like at the end of the day, and especially if you have a remote team. We had 130 employees in 25 states, no brick and mortar, 100% remote. They're all on an island. They want to hear believe it or not, they want to hear the like dumb stuff about your
Yes,
life. They want to
they
hear
do.
about your kid's baseball game. They want to hear about how you burnt your hand on the grill.
Yep.
Because they want to get connection, and just talking about work just isn't going to cut it. And
No.
because we're not in person for the majority, I think, of white collar jobs, particularly, and especially sales jobs, right? You really have to you have to over effort the
Yeah.
communication piece. And a lot of that is including that personal.
Could not agree more. Okay, so let's shift. What inspires you?
Making the world a better place and solving other people's problems.
I love that. I love that. That's great. And what would you like your legacy to be?
I think the biggest thing I want, see, I know I would cry, um, is normalizing bipolar.
Mhm.
Like it's, I tell this story. There's a woman I met. She's in her 50s. Um, and she's gay. And she said it's more terrifying for her to come out of the closet as being bipolar than it was for her to come out of the closet like 20 or 30 years ago
Yep.
as being gay. And I spent over a decade um in the closet, not knowing anyone else who had bipolar. And it was very, very isolating and very alone. Um, and I don't want that for anyone else. So that's what I hope. I hope when my kids look back, that's one of the things that they see that I've done.
Well, I definitely think they will. And I think you've set such a beautiful example for what it really is, because there's certainly a lot of fear, and there's certainly a lot of bunk about what it really is. And you being out and being vocal, and sharing so vulnerably as you do helps people understand. And I think understanding is all everyone as humans crave. So when you can lead the way that way, like you are, it's such a gift to everyone else, and you are teaching us. So for that, I thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
So what is next for you?
Continuing with Ask Bob AI on the, more professional side, I guess, and just continuing to watch that build out. I'm really excited for that, hopeful to see us, grow into a larger team, over the second half of this year, and continuing to see Iron Tribe grow. I think the most exciting thing that we have coming forward this year is we actually our first offline meetup is going to be in Chicago this weekend. So obviously this will air after
Yes.
the Iron Tribe Chicago event. But what we're really, really excited about is in November, we are having our very first adventure quest. And what an adventure quest is I didn't like the word retreat for guys.
Well, yours isn't much of a
Um,
retreat.
I
It's
just
definitely adventure.
Yeah. And so what we wanted to do was put together these backpacking trips that would be really simple for the guys.
Mhm.
So the very first one is going to be outside of Vail, Arizona. And all guys have to do is get to the Tucson airport. That's
Mhm.
it. We take care of everything for there. It's super inexpensive. It's like $300 a person. Um, we've got rental gear, available. But I just think it's another thing to get guys out into the wilderness, 4 nights, be able to just connect with one
Yeah.
another. I think it's going to be amazing. And that's something that we're hopefully going to just continue to expand more and more of the adventure quests as Iron Tribe grows.
Yeah, there is some magic in sitting around a campfire, whether it's a fire or just a circle, and sharing that really helps people open up. I speak as a major camper my whole life, which I know people don't believe, but I
I'm
really
still
was.
shy. We're going.
But I do know the kind of connection that comes out of that sort of meeting, and I'm so excited for you, and I'm so excited to see y'all in Chicago. So that is a total joy for me. But Andrew, thank you for sharing so much of your story, and thank you for leading by example. You do it all the time, but thank you most of all for being my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.
Oh, well, and guys, if you haven't discovered the Outlier Project, this is what you're missing out on. This is the kind of connection we create. Please come over, come check us out, reach out to either of us, and we will tell you all about it. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Heartbeat for Hire podcast, please go subscribe to the YouTube channel or leave a 5-star review at Apple or Spotify. Thank you so much for listening. Go lead with heart and take care of each other. Are you ready to elevate your leadership style and create an exceptional workplace that stands out from the crowd? I'm here to introduce you to a game-changing resource that will transform the way you lead and shape your company culture. It's time to embrace the power of top-down culture. This practical guide empowers your leadership for lasting success, helping you create a workplace where everyone thrives. Get top-down culture today, and let's reshape the future of leadership together. Thanks for listening to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. If you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or consider leaving a 5-star review and a great rating at Spotify or Apple. Thank you so much for your support. Have a great day.